What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Forward to Extraordinary, part of the Strictly from Nowhere podcast experiment. I'm your host, Justin Abrams, a serial entrepreneur in pursuit of wisdom with the goal of sharing it with all of you. And today is no different. You know, one of my curiosities and one of the things that I see in running a startup igniter is an interest in building or attending coursework. Now, courses are different from today. I'm not really talking about continuing education credits. I'm not really talking about signing up for your local community college. I'm not talking about pursuing your MBA. I'm talking about learning from other practitioners. I'm talking about subscribing to other people's methodologies and their playbooks and learning about the things that actually work when trying to build a business. You know me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm always looking for an edge. I'm always trying to evolve with what's happening in the climate. I'm looking for best-in-class information that's out there. And there are so many thought leaders that are creating truly valuable coursework that we can all participate in. And so one of my curiosities lately, especially for my customers and for me and for my business partner and any investments that we make, is where can we obtain knowledge at a clip? At a rate that we can afford, at a pace that we can digest, that's implementable, that we see the ROI in extremely quickly. And so I've been fascinated lately. I'm really looking for other individuals that have made not only a career in education, but have also had a prior life in building, right? We're looking for people that have really been tested, that are tried and true, that have built this methodology out over repetitions and years of participating in an industry. And so Josh Brown, I'm so excited to host you on the show. I think you fit my curiosity quintessentially so. You know, I wouldn't be here without my very dear partner and friend, James Callistra, founder of Wonderfish. Sir, you have been instrumental in providing me some incredible guests. And so, Josh, welcome to the show. I can't wait to unpack your zero to market story.
Yeah, James and Wonderfish are totally awesome. They got their stuff together. They do a great job syncing up guest with podcast.
Absolutely. Shout out to the man himself. Josh, tell me a little bit about you, your human experience, and what makes you unique to kick us off.
Well, excellent. Well, Josh Brown, and I am, an entrepreneur through and through at this point. I've dabbled in it my whole life. I'm also a dad, a husband, all of those things,
Same.
and like we were jamming before the episode here, um, and really that spirit of entrepreneurship is something that came from really just wanting to sort of break the mold of seeing what was going on in the world. Like so many people were moving away from traditional 9-to-5s and, the side hustle culture and all of those things. I always had dabbled in it my whole life, but like a lot of times, particularly people, in my age range and stuff like that, it was, go get the degree no matter what.
Same.
Go get that job, work 30 years, get the retirement thing, all that. It's like, I bounced around so much between jobs. I joked that by the time I hit 40, I'd already been like in like 6 different professions, and of all things, I started out in college. I actually had a technical theater degree. That's what I did. I did lights and sound, and I owned a business doing lights and sound for concerts, special events and all of that.
Cool.
I did lights for like, huge name people, all over the years and all sorts of things. And like, I started seeing like how I could connect that past experience with, then I went in and I was in the corporate world and I saw all those things and utterly hated it. I am not built for the corporate world. That is awful. And I decided to go back and teach. I had an epiphany and I taught technology education for a decade. And that was all before the age of 38. Like I had bounced between all of those things. And what I started seeing when I literally started getting burned out in the teaching space, I did that for a decade, is the education world had shifted. It's this fallacy that, you have to go get a college degree to be successful and make a lot of money. And I was like, hold on, but the most successful people in the world, most of them do not. It's like, where are they getting their knowledge from? Oh, other people. And then I started seeing this whole emerging world of courses that people online were selling. But then the problem there from me being a professional educator, I've all up to PhD hours in education. Is, I have a master's in it and I've worked at the state level developing curriculums. I started seeing something. Experts are really good at what they do and they might teach the way they learned, but they're missing, 65% of the other people that could use their knowledge. So it's like a lot of these people, like, courses don't work. It's like they do work if you know how to deliver them correctly. So that's where I found my initial like hooks into this space, was helping experts take their knowledge and get the most people possible to be able to understand it and apply it. That's literally where I came from this background of, it's part of its presentation, and part of its, that ability to get that knowledge out of your head, but then ultimately how you monetize it. So all of that came full circle back in 2018, and I started doing that. And since then I've worked with, people in startups all the way up to biggest players in the game. Like, for example, I've consulted Russell Brunson and Brian Delaney, who's one of the top 1% marketers in the world. And I've worked with, some of the best entrepreneurs in the game, and been part of masterminds, that, were, definitely, you had to be a player to be in that room type of thing. And it was all based upon literally helping people get their knowledge out to the masses.
It's an incredible industry. First of all, I definitely am subscribed to a little bit of what you were saying with that traditional path. I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Like,
Hmm.
since I was a kid, I come from multiple generations of entrepreneurship. Justin always knew I was going to find my way into being a business
Hmm.
owner of some kind. I just didn't know for what. I didn't know when that timeline was going to show itself. And so you can't just kind of sit around and wait. You could go straight up entrepreneur, but as like a young kid, I needed more structure. And so I went to work, right? I went to work for 15 years professionally, try and get some skills, try and learn about business, and become formidable before I ever really had even the opportunity came to me to open my own business. And so that
Yeah,
traditional path definitely works for a lot of people. It really
it does.
depends on goals and what your situation and circumstances are. My what I see a lot, especially in the world of coursework, I'm definitely guilty of this, is lots of folks are trying to chase side hustle. And
Hmm.
coursework seems like a simple path to entry for lots of folks. They have this knowledge, they want to build a course. There's tons of platforms that are out there that make building coursework super easy. And the goal to me seems a little bit skewed. For example, it's a little selfish to build a
Hmm.
course to try and monetize, to get a little extra side hustle money is typically the reason why that course is not going to be successful long term. And so
Yeah.
I'm really interested from your perspective, like, what is the formula of being a course leader or creator is not necessarily for everybody. And so,
Yeah.
what is the formula of building something effective? To me, it has a little bit to do with community first, trying to support real people,
Hmm.
forget about the monetization strategy of that. But also, if you give it away for free, well, then you don't really have a business. And so I'm wondering from your perspective, kind of where is the sweet spot, and what would call to people in order to be able to be a successful course creator?
To be successful, you have to revert. It's part of one of the frameworks that I have. I call it the bookend build. Is you have to put the end result of what you want that client to be able to do, what they consider, not what you, but what they consider a win first when you design it. So you actually reverse engineer it. So it's like, what with your ideal client would they be like, went through this course, this is a home run for what you promised. Then you look at, where is that ideal person coming in with it? Because so many people default to their brand newbie. It's like, are they or aren't they? Like, what's their knowledge base for? What have they tried? What's worked? What has not worked? All of those things. And then you figure out what are the big things inside that course they need to do to get from where they are right now to where that end result is. And then you have to think about, in those big things, where are the little things that make that big thing possible? What that allows now is a filter of fluff. Like a lot of, because here's the thing, if you're an expert and you love what you do, you probably geek out on it, right? And you want all the little cool things in there, when in reality, the person buying your course could, really care. They're just like, I just want the thing at the end
Answer.
that you promise, the answer. They don't care about the extra stuff. What I tell people to do is, like, by using that bookend build where it's like, where's the end result? What does that look like? What's the promise you can make? If you are at the mid-level person, what result could you get by the end of this in a short period of time? Where is the average person starting? And I say average on purpose, because your high performers, they're going to do better and they're going to get a better result. And even if the person doesn't get quite the result, they'll still get a little result. But if you only shoot for that top performing person, you're going to have the majority of people, 90% of them are not going to hit that result. And then by just focusing on what are the actionable things they need, that's your fluff filter. And that's actually one of the number one things that kills online education programs, whether they're courses, um, uh, whether the courses, consulting, coaching, whatever it might be, is adding too much.
Mm.
So by filtering, you get higher engagement, you get more results. That's what the biggest thing I tell people when they're looking at their program is: fluff does not make a better program. It just adds noise.
It's really interesting. Now, let me ask you, like, what does retention look like? In my journey of building coursework, I've done this in the free model. You can go on YouTube and take a look at some of my
Mhm.
coursework that we've created. We've also created monetizable platforms on like Kajabi and School and like tons of the different platforms that just make the creation possible. Doesn't make it easy. You still have to create like quality content. But to me, retention is always the hard part. You can get somebody to take, course one, maybe course 1 through 10, and then what? And so like, what is the formula for like retaining a community? What are some of the things, like, is it come up with the next course and like you constantly are pushing your audience into new paid coursework? Like, so what does the retention genuinely look like if you're not just chasing
Mhm.
dollar, you're really chasing impact?
Well, really, most people have issues with their memberships because, like, really, a course is nothing. A membership is nothing more than a course or a set of courses that have an engagement component with it. And one of the big engagement components people forget with something like a membership is most people have issues with their programs in completing them, courtesy of a minor little thing. Because most of us have been trained who went to a traditional school type environment. If you raise your hand and say, I need help with this, what does the rest of the room do? Put your hand down, right? It's like being inquisitive and asking for help is a sign of weakness opposed to strength. And that's one of the big things that it's like a paradigm shift for me is that, you know, I realize the highest performers in the world are always like, okay, why? How? What? I can't quite get that. Why? They are incredulous with asking questions. And that's one of the big things. So in your communities and when you start having programs, is having that little bit of support for those little micro issues is a game changer, and all of a sudden you'll see it go up. A lot of it also it depends upon the topic too. For example, I am the CTO of a men's personal development brand. And we actually have, I believe right now, from last time they told us on where our platform, that's our host, we have the highest engagement of any of them, but for our size, like over 600 guys. At any given time, 25% of those are active on our platform.
Mm.
Like 250 people actively engaged on that platform at any given time. And on top of it, they had something like over 10,000 direct messages between each other, like, because we did build a community around it, is having moments of prompting questions that are in your content consistently. That's the other thing. And listening to what that audience wants. Cause like if you do have something, for example, a course and you want to be able to sell more courses, is you need to make sure that it's actually what they want. So having that engagement component to actually hear what that audience wants, you don't have to do market research. Ask them, hey, what's the number out of these three things? What do you think we should do next? And they either A, if it's a membership, they'll stay because it's the next thing you did, or B, if it's a course, guess what? You already have a line of buyers because they already raised their hand saying, I want that. That's the best type of business in the world. You literally, and that's what you can do when you have engagement. And the big thing I tell people is it's consistent engagement. That's the big thing, consistently showing up or having an advocate for your brand showing up. That's another one. It doesn't necessarily have to be you cheerleading them in the comments or providing support, things like that. But that's the big one. And all of a sudden when you do that, the engagement, retention, everything will 10x almost overnight.
You'll know this as a technologist, but that's a very similar methodology into building a roadmap for a piece of software, especially in the SaaS model. It is canvassing your customers. These are the ones that already have loyalty. You don't really want to be in a little bit of a vacuum just building feature bloat, especially today with AI. You can build anything rapidly, but is it the right thing that's going to add value to your customers? The best way to figure out what to build is to open the dialogue. And so I
Yeah.
find that interesting that that's also the methodology of building the next thing for a membership base to keep people retained. Now, a real curiosity is there's no shortage of coursework out there. How do I choose between quality versus maybe a charlatan versus somebody who like has minimal experience and maybe is not really the type of course that I want to participate in? How do I, as a consumer of that coursework, evaluate the legitimacy without just saying, "Oh, I'm going to take Alex Hormozzi's course"?
Hmm.
Because like, sure, tried and true individual. He syndicates that as a content strategy. We are all very aware of his
Yep.
ability. You also
Oh
pay
yeah,
to participate in that substantially.
you
Maybe I
do.
support that. So how do I find the coursework? How do I find the course leadership that's best for me? What's your evaluative process as from a consumer's perspective?
The big thing I like to tell people is I look for what their actual within the solution you're trying to find a program on. Has that person actually created the result? Not how many
Mm,
other people have bought from them. That just means they're a good marketer.
yes.
But what results have they done in that actual industry? And
Yes.
it's actually it's a great question you have, because the other thing I would say for this, with people that are looking at getting into the space, or they're launched and they're still scaling and things like that, is this industry has shifted, where it was for a very long time, whoever was the loudest, whoever had the craziest ads, whoever had the most stripe screenshot showing how much money they made, all of a sudden worked. Everybody is burned out on that and they know it's crap. Anybody can go down to South Beach, rent a Lambo for 2 hours and look like they're some sort of baller entrepreneur.
Really?
I
Right.
mean, or you can just throw that sucker in AI and don't have to leave your living room.
That's right.
It's, and which my buddy Brian and I might have made an ad totally poking fun at that. Check it out on Instagram. But is I think right now we're seeing a big trend of people with true experience. Normally they're going to be a little bit older, or all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork is going, okay, I really don't care about spread screenshots. I don't care you have 30,000 people in your school group. Hold on, you did that, I'm in. And we're seeing a lot of micro people that are just honest, hardworking people do that. Like, for example, I literally saw a guy the other day on Instagram, super niche course, and he's crushing it. He literally is teaching how to make cedar fence post picket planters. He's a dad, like in LA, and he started his journey with putting these cedar fence things. He could only deliver 2 at a time because he had like a hatchback and he had them strapped to the roof of his car. And now he makes thousands a month with these planters.
Wow.
Talk about niche, like, but he has like hundreds of people in his like community doing that. And we're seeing people that are like want just micro niche things, like this one specific thing. And I think a lot of that is what we're starting to see come back around, opposed to people hiring a generalist. They want a highly specified person with actual real world experience in it. And that's going to be a big one, because the noise of fast created AI is dying out.
I also think that there's just like this race. There's a level of impatience that I think a lot of people have. I'm
Hmm.
guilty. So I'm going
No,
to let you beat me up for this right now.
no,
I'd like
I'm
I've definitely,
guilty too. So like,
of course. Yeah. I built a course several years ago called Inception Marketing, and it's all the things that someone can do absolutely for free for totally $0 to catch a pulse of a market before you ever build anything. One of the detriments to building a startup, particularly a piece of software, is you build it without validation. You build it
yeah,
without your first customer in mind. You build it without an audience. You build it based off of assumptions. Maybe it's from your prior
yeah.
experiences. You found a little gap in your work in your career, and you'd like to fill that with a bit of a startup. But how many people have spent too much money on building something that just was not validated, that the market was not ready for?
Yeah.
And so I built a course. I built a course maybe several years ago called Inception Marketing. I think it's eight different things that someone can do totally for free, completely from your computer without ever leaving your desk to validate as to whether there is even a market of interest for your
Mhm.
thesis before you ever build
Yeah.
anything. And
Yeah.
so
Smart.
I built that from my years of doing this for
Mhm.
customers. They come to us before I ever get started. I have a series of questions through my sales process to try and just validate whether somebody's idea should be built. One of my strong suits is protecting people from spending money on a problem that I don't think is going to survive. That's
Oh,
not the
yeah.
reputation I want. I want success stories in my portfolio. I don't want just a graveyard. And so
Mhm.
I built a course out of it. Now, for me, the information that I put out there, that was like part of like my life's work. Now I'm only 38. So
Mhm.
what life's work, right? Like it's not an entire accumulation of my life's experience. It's up until now as a true
Yeah.
student and a practitioner. This is what I see. These are things that people can do. I got tons of hits. If you go to YouTube, there's just like tons of consumption of that content. I put it out there. Engagement was low, right? Like the views are really high, but the engagement is low. And so I was like, oh, well, if the views are really high, maybe we need a bit of a monetization strategy. So I rebuilt the course on Gumroad. I rebuilt the course on school.com, just thinking that like the saturation of these marketplaces, the attention of
Mhm.
people that are coming there for the reason of looking for a course, well, maybe it could monetize. Maybe people are interested in actually signing up and taking the next level and engaging with me directly and et cetera, et cetera. Man, that shit just didn't work. It went the
Mhm.
opposite direction. You take this course that was like seemingly successful on YouTube, where like I already knew that like the community wasn't there, the interest and engagement wasn't there. Maybe people are just consuming the first 30 seconds or first minute. The metrics and analytics matter about that content. But I was just persistent. And I just pursued that for my own selfish reasons
Yeah.
of like I'd like to monetize this coursework and got punched in the face. Like it just didn't
Yeah.
survive. And now it's just out there for free. And whoever wants to consume it, that's terrific. And it's more self-serving and in-house for my customers to say, hey, did you do all of these things before we took our first discovery call? The answers to this is important for us before we determine whether a partnership is viable here. But I'm really interested in the litmus test. I'm interested in the humility of building a course, of thinking it's your thing. How do you know when it's not?
Yeah, that's the hard one, and particularly for so many entrepreneurs, we just utterly geek out and love certain specific aspects of it. And we have to ultimately then go, okay, if I love that piece, what audience is that going to serve? Like, is that an audience that I want to serve? And, there's of course the ever popular thing on Instagram of, the videos of, a low ticket offer, 35 back and forth trying to haggle over $100, stuff like that, $50,000 client invoice sent, no problems, like those types of things.
Right.
And there is there's a lot of truth to that, of people that are willing to invest a larger amounts normally are a lot more assertive and direct on doing that. So you have to think about, like, do you like working with those people that need more, hand holding and things like that. And the acid test I like to look at is I will inevitably just start doing research right out of the gate. Are other people selling it? Is it selling at a decent clip? And not only that, what is the reason for selling it? Is it something that is part of an ascension model? Is it, to send people over to a SaaS? Like, what's the end reason for that vehicle? Is it a standalone offer? Is it something that should be part of a bigger scope? Like, I like to look at that and start seeing, like, what other people are promoting and things like that, and I do a lot of research before, like, for validation, and that's what I like to do, is just really see if there's also a category king or queen that they're gonna have to compete against. Somebody that's just, like, so in that space, you just can't even, go after it, which in the online education space, there's almost never that's the case. Like, there's really, I mean, even like, okay, like your example, Alex Hormozy, he's known for acquisitions. how many M&A firms are out there.
Endless.
Like he has the largest in that category social following, and there's still M&A firms doing hundreds of millions a year and are
Absolutely.
bigger than him. Like he just visually looks like he's doing that. And so there's rarely that. I just like to have it in the acid test of like, is there somebody, even though look at Tony Robbins in personal development, how many other personal development people are there? He's not even the category king. And he has $1 million a person mastermind. It's like stuff like that. So that's really the big one I look at is I look to see, are other people selling it? Is it part of a bigger ecosystem? Because that's one of the things that I think a lot of people miss is that a lot of times courses are part of an ecosystem. It's rarely do you find somebody that their entire business is 100% selling nothing but education products. There's normally other components with it because it is also, if you're not, you're missing huge demographics.
So let me ask you a question around like the syndication strategy, because kind of cliche, but content is king, never more so today, and never more so authentic human created content. In the age of AI, you could spin up coursework in 5 minutes and
Yeah.
like just do trial by fire, do as many courses
Yeah.
as you possibly can. You could do them all simultaneously. Most people are looking for like a truly authentic thought leader, somebody that they can go buy the book off the shelf, somebody that I can go watch them on a podcast, somebody that I can truly follow and become a true fan of. So I'm
Yeah.
interested, like take me personally, not that I'm so successful in building these courses or anything like that, but like I definitely have syndicated myself across as many omni-channel strategies as I possibly could. Some are more successful than others, but now it's based
Yeah.
on paranoia. If I put down one of those channels, was that the channel that was going to spike? And so I'm interested in like, what does syndication look like? Is it a full on commitment that somebody has to be willing to be a full-time content creator, that you got to own all channels, that you have to show, your private life or your professional life, and you have to kind of just be more human? I'm asking with genuine curiosity because it's so competitive out there.
It is.
And so what's like the thing?
I think there is no thing. Like that's the bit that's it. There's so many ways people are crazy successful in the space. For example, personally, I literally have to remind myself to do social posts and stuff like that. Like,
Same.
it's because that's not my thing. I didn't grow up, and I'm 44. Like, I did not grow up with Instagram and all that. I was one of the first people on Facebook, though, back in the day. My college was one of the first ones. So I have like an OG account from way back in the day.
Amazing.
Heck, I was on MySpace. If
Same,
you want a
same.
real throwback. Side
Thomas is a
note,
great
your
friend.
page is actually still on there. If you actually
Oh, wow,
search
that's so
MySpace
cool.
and put your name, it is still on there, um, which is hilarious. Um, but I think the big thing is just pick what you like to do. And if you just double down on the platforms that really resonate with you the most and your audience is on it. For example, I know my audience could give two figs about TikTok or Snapchat. I'm not spending time on TikTok or Snapchat. It's not going to happen. I know that my audience is on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. That's where mine are. So I spend most of my effort on those. And then I just cross purpose the stuff the other ones, knowing it's not going to go as well. But I can take my Instagram short or a podcast interview or whatever, and just throw it up on YouTube. So if somebody happens to glance there, it's okay. That's the way I look at it. And also the thing is, like, if you're somebody who's just like, I'd rather pay to play, congratulations, you can run straight paid traffic. You can run for a couple of bucks a day social post using, Instagram, using a Meta Ad Manager. Take some of those. No, you know what? For $300 a month, I'm going to take and only have to post once a week, but I'm going to throw some money behind it. Congratulations, you now have reach. I do that all the time. Like, I know I'm not as consistent on that, so I run engagement type ads with my stuff. So guess what? I spent $300 last month on that particular campaign, and I've had something like 30,000 views. I couldn't pay a social media marketing company $300 a month to get that many views organically without producing 3-4 posts a day. I'd rather do that. So it's just pick what flavor you like and then just commit to that. You don't have to do every marketing vehicle on the planet. Just pick where your audience is and then double down on it and be open to what is actually trending.
So much of this comes down to discipline. It's just so much. It's so easy to just chase every possible way of getting
Yeah.
attention. It's like so much of this. Sure, like trial is definitely valuable. To know that your audience is not sitting on TikTok is because maybe you were on TikTok and your audience didn't appear for you. And like, how long do you just continue to go down that path before you just take a left turn and say that that's not for me? The discipline and the skill to stop, to kill something or to go in a different direction, that takes repetition. It also just takes a little bit of like trust in the ether that you're maybe not going down the right path, and the wisdom to listen to yourself.
For me, because of my education background, I'm a research geek. I literally did the research ahead of time. I went and I looked up the statistics on what the age, demographics, and locations of all the big platforms was. That's what I did. I literally reverse engineered. Somebody else spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to find out that data for me. That's what I did. And I just happened to find, okay, for people that are a little more in the consultative space, guess what? LinkedIn still reigns king.
Sure.
Like it still does. Plus, they have some great automations to find them for searches. Then I also looked at the age demographics and the income demographics and careers and stuff of Facebook and Instagram. They're on there too. So literally, that's the reason why I picked those three for me as being my core for my audience for doing this. Don't we do have we are expanding into things like YouTube and things like that more, but just like with a small, lean, nimble team, that's what we leaned into heavy. Because also I looked at, because of my research, I looked at what the posting cadence has to be on platforms like YouTube, for example, for what I could do and commit to it. Like, for example, right now, the rotation is if you're not posting a long form video once every 10 days, you're not going to get the inertia from it. And you have to be posting shorts in between. That's why you see a lot of creators right now that have longer, more high polished videos are doing collabs with a secondary edit for their channel and they're posting that. It's because they don't want to get outside that 10-day window. That's what they're doing. So that's one of the big things. It's just like sometimes just sit there and do the research, particularly with AI now. You can go to Claude and go, hey, this is my avatar. What social platforms are the best for me to be on? Like, that type of thing. And then, what type of posts are they most engaged with? And I mean, I play authentic as possible on that. The only thing I do is I try switching what like the actual aesthetic of the video looks like sometimes,
Sure.
like, and the thing is, that's part of your split testing is I did almost the exact same post and I made sure to post it about the same time each day. I did one from my desk here with all the lighting and the crate and the camera and all of that. And then I did another one handheld with my phone standing out by my pool with my sunglasses on. And the one with me in the sunglasses by the pool, like was 10-1 of me with the
I believe it.
crazy stuff. It's like, so I just know I can vary them, but I did find to a warm audience for my conversion stuff, the one here actually converted better because they consider it more serious.
Ah,
So it's like capture attention. People are scrolling. They want like fun and excitement and stuff like that. But then when they're ready to buy something, they want to get serious. So, things like that. So it's just, you just have to be like, pay attention to what if data is showing you versus how you feel. Very different.
yeah. The relationship with emotion is a really interesting thing to just learn through. So much of this impulsive behavior is really about our emotions and the things that we want. And like you try to just make something happen and force it into the world, but it's not necessarily the thing that the world wants from you. And unlocking your superpower is something I talk about all the time on this show. And like, I'm curious for you, like you've been through multiple versions of your career. I'm definitely have a question coming for you about your role as a CTO. We can get into that in a moment. But as you think about like, what is your superpower as you've created a business out of this? Like it's now a referral based business, I'm sure. And you're getting organic inbound interest in things that you're building. What do you think is your superpower after all of this?
My superpower really is create, turning it from chaos to clarity.
Mm,
That's really the big thing is because there's so many data inputs on being an entrepreneur. Like, how should I frame my course? What's my traffic strategy? What's my conversion strategy? Like, all of these things. And that's the entire thesis to my entire agency right now is it's an ecosystem. Is my expertise is taking tech, making it incredibly simple for people, figuring out how the tech can take the load off of the stuff they don't like doing, and then figuring out what's the leanest, simplest path to go from traffic, whether it be paid or organic, to them buying your products and ultimately buying the level they're willing to commit to. That's what we do. And it all starts with what goes on between that expert's ears and what's in that mind is the thing that those people want to buy. That's what we do. It's literally the first thing we do with our agency clients is we sit down and we go, okay, what's the thing that you do right now for your existing clients that they go, wow, that was amazing. We start with that. And then we reverse engineer everything before that.
It's
That's
a really
literally what we do that's what I'm literally what I geek out on the most.
it's an interesting perspective, and of course, I told you it was coming. Like, I'm interested in the position of chief technology officer because you're approaching it from a different perspective. Lots of folks are really approaching this from a non-technical stakeholder leadership perspective, and so being a self-proclaimed technologist gives you another strategic advantage, which is being able to exploit systems, being able to understand the
Mhm.
innovation path that we're all on, like kind of just being at the forefront of what is available to people. And so I'm interested. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a CTO. Is this something you've evolved into? Has this always been in your background? Like, tell me a little bit about that role in your Rolodex.
I've never been on the CTO side before. To give a little background is it's a men's personal development brand called Millionaire Man Cave. And it has a really, really good catch to it. And it's a group, several of us are all very experienced entrepreneurs. So the leadership team's all very experienced. And they asked me to come on board because I was friends with Brian Delaney. He's one of the founders. And the thing is, particularly because it's at heart a membership. And that was what I cut my teeth on. It's what I helped, ClickFunnels with. In fact, I helped Todd Dickerson and Andrew Culver actually design the ClickFunnels 2.0 member area and courses and things like that. I actually went down to Atlanta and helped them with it. I've designed custom platforms for people, but also I've been on the marketing side, working with those. So they asked me to come on board because I've had the experience of how is the educational content that's going to get delivered to the membership, but then how can we do that with technology at scale? Because the goal is to have 1 million members. That's a scale like that. You got to have a massive amount of tech to support 1 million members. So that's where I came in and also helping bring clarity to those systems. Because the thing is, like, you're starting out, like right now we have over 600 members in that platform, and we have at any given time over 25% of them are active on that platform, which is part of the thing of going, how we're going to nurture them. So that's where I came in, is that background of those types of things, of feeling not because I can sit there and code Ruby on Rails or any of those types of things, or I'm writing some crazy Python code, things like that, but just understanding the orchestration of those pieces and then finding the right people to actually implement it when we need it. That's where I came in with it. And I have that particular business, the entire thesis is to run as lean and efficient a technology backend as possible to support 1 million members on 6 continents. That's literally the entire thing we're basing it around.
Now I'm interested because there's a rent versus build problem that's going on right now. It's never cheaper to build something. So, like, why rent from one of these existing platforms? For example, like a school.com or Kajabi or whatever other platform that you might want to build your coursework into.
Mhm.
It's never more possible to build your own custom solution. It's never more possible to build like your native app experience or whatever type of technology infrastructure you would like to build around your business. And then you own it. You don't have the risk of either being booted or banned
Mhm.
or maybe that business going down or whatever the scenario might be. What's your perspective and how should somebody approach that?
Well, the comments section is going to be extremely polarized on this question. And
Sure.
I'm going to give my 2 cents, but I'm going to throw the flag initially of I am not an attorney. I'm some dude on the internet. Okay. All great comments start with that caveat, right? Is a lot of it comes down to liability, is the fact of, okay, you have a platform, let's say about 100,000 members in it, and you built it. And then it's your 100% responsibility if there's a data breach.
Sure.
Or if there's downtime. Several years ago, there was a platform that had multiple days of downtime. They had to refund those members. I mean, I'm talking, this was a massive check they were having to do it. Things like that. There's a lot of the things of, yeah, I mean, I could literally probably by Monday have an entire platform built out.
Right.
But there's so many of those pieces right now. And yes, I vibe code stuff all the time right now. I'm vibe coding several apps, but they have very low risk to what we're doing. You know, they're tools to use within other platforms. Because if that was the case, everybody'd be like, oh, I'm just going to make my own Calendly and I'm going to make my own this, all that. It's like, is the effort to build it and then host it and then maintain it worth it? Also, one of the big things is that, for example, we have a completely custom app that's on both Apple products and Google. Is they have very specific rules, and every time that app there's an iOS update, it has to be compliant.
Of course.
So we didn't want to have to sit there and have to chase that all the time. So what we're building is complex enough that we wanted a partner, because that's really the big thing. If you're doing something of big enough scale, you actually really do partner with the host software. Is when we ran the numbers to have all of that and having the things like the accreditation and all uptimes and all of those, the expense was better to have a partner help host that and to build it your own. If you're doing small volumes or, you know, a tool or some sort of widget or whatever, yeah, you can code that yourself. We've done that. We have a number of tools that we're building for clients right now that were vibe coded along with some of our stuff. And that's totally cool. But it's like, particularly when you start getting to larger scale, that's where you really want to have, you know, a team of people behind it. So if something goes sideways, ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, well, we had a host. We can throw it back in that. Like we are not the ones doing that site. So, yeah, there's risk and rewards on both sides.
Yeah, it's the classic asset versus liability equation.
Mhm. Oh, totally. Yeah,
And
because I mean,
if you
like
can build
every,
it, you should.
yeah, and totally, and like particularly, my thing is always be prepared.
Mm.
So, for example, it's not if there's going to be a data breach, when there's a data breach, is it covered? If you know if there's, you know, an AWS down, whose fault, you know, who's it on, stuff like that. Like happened last year. A lot of companies got hosed
Yep,
by that.
I remember it well.
Yeah, it was like a whole internet was just like,
Yep,
what?
I remember it well. The only day off an
Yep.
engineer actually gets.
Yeah, I know. And luckily it doesn't happen often. So yeah.
You know, as we round third base, I very often in these episodes like to leave an open-ended to my guests. You know, these conversations often drag up something, and at the end of the show, when we're debriefing, it's man, I wish we would have covered that. So now's that time. No pressure, but Josh, anything come to mind of a topic that we didn't cover that you want to make sure we talk about?
I think the real big thing for, and this goes for people that are just starting their entrepreneur journey or people that are experienced, it's a great reminder. And I actually sign off my newsletter and everything else with this is simple wins. Simple period wins period. It's like the simple things are what drive a business. If you really look at some of the most successful businesses in the world, they really have one core solution. It's just multiple flavors. And if you look at the things that you are known for, I almost guarantee that you're overlooking the glaring flashing light of what people really want from you. If you start thinking about people you've networked with, or even a networking event you've given some people some nuggets of info on, all of that, that is the thing you need to concentrate on. Because so many people just miss the simple stuff, or they start sitting there having to think they have to add this, this, and this. Like I was talking to a lady earlier today, and she's like, well, I've got these 5 courses that, I want to put out and all these other things. I was like, okay, cool. Like, what do you have out there right now? Like, what's your traffic? All that. It's just like, Yeah, I don't have any. I'm like, so you're building 5 products and you don't have any traffic arriving on any of them. Putting the cart before the horse here. It's like,
Sure.
let's boil it down. Let's get one. Which is the one that your audience would be like, yeah, let's get the one out. Simple. Let's get that one thing dialed in, then we'll do the next one. So simple always wins. Same thing in the marketing. It's like, you don't necessarily have to start or even at high scale. I know some people right now that are running ad campaigns that if anybody in the ads game would look at it, they'd be like, that it's so amateur hour and everything like that. And they're like, they're doing over $1 million a year. They literally have like 3 campaigns, a couple of dozen ads with like 3 landing pages, and they're doing millions a year. Like, I always look at is it 100% necessary? So simple always wins. And I just want to remind everybody that, like, you don't need crazy complex. And the people that you should work with are the ones that naturally resonate with you. Like, those are the people you want to surround yourself with, because entrepreneurship can be a really lonely game. And surrounding yourself with people, even if they're in adjacent areas, but like, this is something, Napoleon Hill talked about, of having a mastermind. Mastermind is not a place you spend $50,000 and show up with some dudes in the front of the room. It can be, and you can get a lot of cool stuff out of it, but you can have your own. Like, find 5 or 6 people that you'll be brutally honest with, and each one of you has allied skills, and help each other out. Like, bounce ideas off each other. Like, hey, I have these 3 course ideas. Which one do you think I should go with? And they go, I actually do that one. You're like, oh, that could have saved you months and a lot of time and money. Like, circle yourself up people and always go with the simple option.
I really love that. Some sound wisdom, simple dot wins dot, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's also simple wins, like keep it simple, like don't overthink it. One of the things that I get a lot from people is the fear to release the thing, either the first version, the first
Hmm.
episode, the first social reel, like whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to boil the ocean. Simple
No.
definitely wins. Just
Yep.
do the one thing once. Get one customer to give you feedback. Don't say to yourself, I need 50. Just get one. And then when you
Yep.
get that, you'll get 2, and so forth and so on. Like,
Yep.
keeping it super simple and boiling it down to its component parts is definitely sound wisdom. Josh, where can people find you and get involved in the things you care about?
Yep. You can find me across all social platforms at JK Brown Official. I'm on all of them across the board with that. And you can also go to jkbrownofficial.com. That's where you can see all the different stuff we have going on.
Excellent. All that stuff is going to be in the show notes. Josh, I can't thank you enough for the conversation. It's definitely a curiosity of mine. It's one of the things that, I have just tried to crack the code on for me professionally and for my business and for the things that I care about. And I appreciate your wisdom so much. Thanks for joining the episode, and I wish you forward to extraordinary.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
It's a pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.